Healing after a narcissist feels like becoming a stranger to yourself. The reflection you meet in the mirror no longer carries the old you, yet it doesn't feel like the new you either. Carl Jung once wrote, "I am not what I ought to be. I am not what I want to be. I am not what I hope to be. But still, I am not what I used to be." And in that space between who you were and who you are becoming, the journey of individuation begins. Have you ever healed so deeply that you no longer recognize the person staring back at you in the mirror? Almost as if recovery itself had turned you into a stranger? That's the hidden reality of life after a narcissist. The old self is gone. The new self feels foreign, and you're caught in a strange in-between. Carl Jung once wrote, "I am not what I ought to be. I am not what I want to be. I am not what I hope to be. But still, I am not what I used to be." And if you've ever felt like healing left you unrecognizable, then you already understand the truth behind these words. When you first break free from a narcissist, you expect relief. You imagine peace. But instead, what often shows up is confusion. Suddenly, you don't laugh at the same things. You don't trust your own instincts. And the life you once lived doesn't fit anymore. It feels like waking up in a house you used to call home. Only now, every room is rearranged. You know you live here, but you don't recognize it. Jung would say this is because the old persona, the mask you wore to survive, has been shattered. For years, maybe decades, you bent yourself to fit someone else's shadow. You learned to silence parts of yourself, just to keep the peace. But when the mask cracks, what's left underneath isn't the polished, familiar self. It's the raw, unfiltered core you never got to know. This is where Jung's theory of individuation comes in. Individuation is the process of becoming whole, integrating the parts of yourself that you denied, ignored, or projected onto others. Jung believed that we don't truly become ourselves until we confront these hidden aspects of the psyche. And the pain of being with a narcissist forces this confrontation. Example 1. The shadow. Jung described the shadow as the dark, rejected parts of ourselves. The anger, the vulnerability, the shame. Narcissists are experts at projecting their own shadow onto you, making you carry what they refuse to face. Over time, you become a container for their rage, their insecurity, their emptiness. But here's the paradox. When you finally leave, you're forced to confront not only their shadow, but your own. You have to ask, why did I tolerate this? What part of me was silent when I should have spoken? That's where the stranger begins to appear. Because you're not just grieving the relationship, you're meeting the shadow self you never wanted to face. Example 2, persona. The persona is the social mask we wear to function in the world. In a narcissistic relationship, this mask often becomes survival. You smile when you're hurting. You agree when you want to scream. You shrink yourself so they can shine. But when healing begins, that persona collapses. Suddenly, you're not who you presented to the world, but you're not sure who's underneath either. The mask is gone, and what's left feels like a stranger. Example 3, anima/animus. Jung also spoke about the anima, the inner feminine, and the animus, the inner masculine, the inner balance of energies we all carry. Narcissistic relationships often distort this balance. For example, if you were forced into constant caretaking, your anima, the nurturing side, may have been overused, while your animus, the assertive boundary-setting side, was suppressed. Healing requires rebalancing these energies, but that process feels awkward, like learning to walk with new legs. Again, the stranger. So why does healing make us feel like strangers to ourselves? Because healing isn't about going back to who you were. It's about becoming someone new. Think about it. The you before the narcissist was untested. The you during the relationship was survival-driven. And the you after? That person is forged in fire. They carry scars, wisdom, and awareness that the old self never had. But here's the real problem. Growth always feels uncomfortable before it feels natural. It's like moving into a new body that doesn't quite fit yet. You speak differently. You notice red flags you used to ignore. You crave solitude, when before you feared being alone. All of this feels foreign, but it's proof of transformation. Example 1. Silence. Before, silence terrified you. You needed noise, distraction, anything to avoid the emptiness. After healing, silence becomes sacred. It feels strange at first, but you begin to realize the stranger loves the quiet. Example 2. Relationships. Before, you crave validation. After healing, you're suspicious of flattery. You pull back when someone love bombs you. This feels cold, maybe even harsh, but it's the stranger protecting you. Example 3. Identity. Before, you were the fixer, the pleaser, the one who kept everyone together. After healing, you start saying no. You cancel plans. You prioritize your energy. At first, you don't even recognize this version of yourself, but it's you reborn. Here's the truth most people don't tell you. Becoming a stranger to yourself is not the end of healing. It is healing. Jung would remind us that the path to wholeness is not about comfort. It's about confrontation. When you feel alien in your own skin, it means the old patterns no longer fit. The stranger you become is not the enemy. It's the first glimpse of your true self. And yes, it's lonely. Yes, it's disorienting. But it's also sacred. Because for the first time, you're meeting yourself without the mask, without the narcissist shadow, without the weight of who you used to be. I'll be honest, I felt this too. There was a time when I left behind a toxic connection, and I remember walking down the street, feeling like a ghost in my own life. The coffee shop I loved didn't feel right. The friends I used to lean on felt distant. Even my own laughter sounded foreign to me. But over time, I realized that disconnection wasn't emptiness. It was space. Space for a new self to arrive. Space for boundaries. For strength. For clarity. The stranger eventually became someone I not only recognized, but respected. So if you feel like healing has made you a stranger to yourself, don't panic. That's a sign you're evolving. Jung's words remind us, I am not what I ought to be. I am not what I want to be. I am not what I hope to be. But still, I am not what I used to be. You're no longer who you were, and that is the point. Here's my challenge for you. Take one moment today to sit in that unfamiliar space. Journal one thing you've noticed about the stranger you're becoming. Maybe it's how you value your time differently. Maybe it's how you protect your energy. Maybe it's how you no longer tolerate what you once accepted. Because every time you recognize the stranger within, you're one step closer to wholeness. And in the end, that's the deepest form of healing. Not returning to who you were, but awakening into who you were always meant to be. Think about this for a second. When you finally step away from the person who manipulated or controlled you, what you're left with is silence. And in that silence, the question rises, who am I if I'm no longer who they needed me to be? So if you feel like a stranger to yourself, remember, that's not the end of your healing. It's the beginning. Thank you for watching. And if this message spoke to you, don't forget to subscribe for more reflections on psychology, healing, and self-discovery.